Thank you for joining us today. I want to go ahead and get started. This is extremely exciting. Thank you for joining us. My name is Soleil Gonzalez, and I am a Director of Corporate Engagement and Relations at NAF. I am incredibly excited to have the opportunity to moderate Celebrating Black Engineers presented by Raytheon Technologies. With close to 180,000 employees, Raytheon Technologies is defining the future of aerospace and defense. I can spend some time trying to explain exactly what that means, but I think it's a lot better if you guys get a chance to see it for yourself.
Amelia Earhart flew our engine successfully across the Atlantic. Every astronaut you wanted to be when you grew up wore our spacesuit. They were always looking beyond their horizon. Today, military pilots fly our integrated systems into battle, helping all to return home more safely. First responders use our technologies to strengthen the fight on the front lines. Commercial pilots use our instruments, helping to ensure safe travel. Meteorologists use our satellite models to know when the next Katrina is coming. The 48th uses our defense systems, and every veteran who served remains our priority when they get home. Our technologies and community programs make a difference locally and globally every day. That's the future of aerospace and defense. Raytheon Technology.
We would like to thank Raytheon Technology for allowing more than 200 students from various partners the opportunity to participate in a celebration of Black History Month at Raytheon Technologies. Today, students from across the country will get the chance to hear from dynamic engineers at Raytheon. I would like to ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves, starting with Kelly.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Leitzer. I'm from Connecticut, East Hartford, and I'm here representing our Pratt Whitney Business Unit as Associate Director of Project Engineering for the F-35 military fighter jet.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Cordell Charleston. I earned my mechanical engineering degree, my bachelor's and my master's at North Carolina A&T State University. I'm here as an engineering director from our interiors business unit in Collins Aerospace.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zaire Sylvia, and I'm a senior systems engineer for our Raytheon's Intelligence and Space division in El Segundo, California, and I work in our space division. And I graduated from Tuskegee University with an aerospace engineering degree, and I also have a master's in space systems engineering degree as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca Wesley, and I graduated from Tuskegee University. My majors was mechanical engineering, and I received a master's from California State University in engineering management. I'm currently an integrated cross-product team lead in a defense program, and I represent Raytheon's missiles, and I represent Raytheon's missiles and defense.
Thank you once again for joining us today. We have received a lot of questions from students from across our network, and we are excited to learn more about your journey to becoming engineers at Raytheon. This first question is for Cordell and Kelly. Why did you choose engineering as a career?
I chose engineering because as a high school student in the summers, I was working at an amusement park. I had the roller coaster job, and I really fell in love with roller coaster design. So I went into mechanical engineering in college because I wanted to pursue roller coaster design.
That's a good question. When I was in 8th grade, I took a drafting class, and we used that time. Some of you students probably are using CAD now and using computers, but we had pencils, papers, T-squares, and triangles to draw isometric images and whatnot. I really got hooked on that type of thing. I was also really into cars. So just seeing that was really amazing to me. And I'm not gonna lie, once I found out how much engineers made in terms of compensation and pay, I was like, okay, that's for me.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your honesty. Zaire, you are a space systems engineer. How did you know this is what you wanted to do?
Since I was a child, I always loved space. So my mother bought me a telescope from the Dollar General store when I was 3, and I used to tell her everything about the constellations. And ever since then, I've been hooked on space. And I looked up all the different ways you can work in the space industry. And I also wanted to become an astronaut since I was a child. And I needed to find out different routes and paths and options. And I ended up becoming an engineer instead. And I loved it ever since.
Did you have a mentor that kind of helped guide you make that decision? Was there someone along that pathway to kind of say, you know what, did you think about this? Like, what about this other possible career pathway?
I actually didn't. Google was my help growing up. I had to Google a lot when I was a child because there wasn't a lot of people that believed in me to become an engineer, let alone tell me science or math was a path for me growing up. And so I had to look up, okay, what kind of career paths or what universities were the right path for me. And so Google was my best friend growing up and trying to find the career path that was right for me. So Google was my mentor growing up until I actually went to university and met real mentors that I have now. And then even in our industry, I have wonderful mentors that I have met at Raytheon.
Thank you for that, because oftentimes, we hear of students that don't have access, to someone, right, that can be an actual mentor that they can speak to every single day or ever so often about some of the career choices that they may be thinking about. So thinking that someone, like you actually used Google to do that, that kind of opens up other possibilities for students that perhaps may not have even thought about that. Bianca, this next question is for you. How did you know you wanted to work as a systems engineer?
Interestingly enough, growing up, I too am like the other panelists. I enjoyed taking everything apart. We had a rule in our house growing up: if you can take anything apart, as long as you put it back together and it worked as good or better than it did before. So I was under hoods taking apart, regardless if it was a microwave, a transmission, or anything, to get my hands on it. It was a way of innovation that I strive for. So actually, that's how I got my start in engineering. But then also a step further with system engineering, a lot of people might not understand what that is. So system engineers is really more like the glue that holds everything together. You look at a big picture mindset. So going into school, as earlier, I did mechanical engineering, but as my career progressed in details, utilizing skill sets that was learned, I realized I like finding the white space and really solving problems. So that's how I decided I wanted to be a system engineer.
Thank you for that. And I think, that's a kind of perfect segue for my next question for you. And that is, did you have any key internships that kind of helped you make that decision? What was that pivot for you? Were there any key opportunities or key internships that you did that really solidified that pathway for you?
Okay, so first I have to go with my first in high school in Birmingham. I worked in a breast cancer lab, in a lab in vitro cells. And I thought, okay, this is awesome. Going and experience the science behind it. But then, because biomedical engineering was a thought in my mind, but then I realized, no, that's not the path for me, sitting in the lab all day, testing cells and details. Now, that is an extraordinary thing if that's what you want to do, just not for me. But then the second piece of that is I had that opportunity to realize that was not what I wanted to do, which is the key thing to understand what you don't want to do to reach what you're really trying to accomplish. Then as in college, I had an internship at Raytheon. It was just Raytheon at the time. My sophomore year started off, and every summer I go from Birmingham, Alabama to Arizona and go and intern to learn and work on missiles. And at that time is really where I got to see how important supporting the warfighter is in a systems engineering thinking as well as engineering is for me.
Thank you. Now, I do have a question that was asked by one of the students, and I think it's an important one because some of you have kind of mentioned it already, and that is, did you really like math and science in high school, and how important was liking math and science to you all becoming engineers? And any one of you can take that question on.
I'll try.
Okay.
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
So ironically enough, I like math and I like certain parts of science. I like more of the physics space of science, but when it came to math, I really enjoyed more of the calculus side of the house and more engineering math. So for me, it really was a part of enjoying what I'd like to do, but also for the part that I did not like in regards to some of the sciences, I realized that's not, if I get past that first threshold, you can actually accomplish the bigger picture of what you want to do. So if you don't like it right now, it might be the subject and matter in which you're learning it. However, in the long term, it's teaching you some foundations. So don't give up just because you didn't like math and science and say, I can't be an engineer. No.
Yeah, I approach it. Do I like math and science? Well, yes, I do. More important than that, I like to problem solve. And if you are someone who naturally likes to solve problems, you can find ways to enjoy math and science, that hunt for the correct answer. So I wouldn't look at it maybe so much as a discipline in the subject matter, or if you're a problem solver, you're already an engineer. If you had to hold the door open while you were bringing in groceries and you put a gallon of milk there to keep the door open, you just solved the problem as you went back and forth. You're an engineer.
Kelly, I know you were about to jump in there.
Oh, I was going to say I loved math and science. I guess I was one of those nerds, but I wouldn't say I was a whiz kid. So it doesn't mean I always got concepts first time around. So, I would definitely encourage, as a lot of the other panelists mentioned, being able to reach out and ask for help, working with teams, going to your TA or your extra credit hours to get your questions asked. Once you get the concept, you're good. So it doesn't matter. You can become a great engineer even if you don't get it the first time around.
And then I think I'm a little bit different from everybody. So with me, I went to high school with the second grade reading level. So I have a learning disability. So I have dyslexia, and then I also have a speech impediment. So I had to go through speech therapy for the longest time. So I still can't pronounce some of my words correctly. But with math and science, that's where I excelled at. And so that was where my strength was. But with my thing is with my high school, they always kept trying to let me not get into the higher math classes. So I wanted to go to the pre-AP math courses, and I wanted to go to the AP math courses, but I had to literally fight my way into those math courses at my high school. So I had to have a actual meeting with the principal and my parents, and then the teachers for those courses, just for me to get my seat into that class. And then they would ask my parents, oh, do you think she can handle this class? I was like, don't talk to them, talk to me. I'm the one that's actually taking this class. And I'm like, I can handle all of this. I'm the person that is the student that's gonna be actually handling the work, that's gonna be taking the test, that's actually gonna be turning in the assignments. And I'm going to be able to accomplish everything I can accomplish. And I'm going to be able to walk across the stage one day and become who I say I'm going to become. And look where I'm at now. So I'm you can like what you like, and you can do whatever you want to do, no matter what. So
thank you for sharing that. And I think, the underlining, thought process there's no such, you shouldn't limit yourself, right, of what you can achieve. Just because something seems challenging or hard doesn't mean you cannot conquer it, right? Doesn't mean you cannot learn it with guidance and assistance and tutoring, like Kelly mentioned. Sometimes things are going to be hard. That doesn't mean that you cannot do them. It just means it might take you a little bit more work, right, to get it done. But I think it's also a perfect segue, Zaire, thank you for sharing that, because what you just shared is a perfect segue to the next question, which is, how do you surround yourself with the right support, the right people that help provide that guidance, right, that keep you focused and along that pathway? And in your case, Zaire, you are a self-advocate. You have to be a self-advocate. You have to advocate for yourself, right? And say, I can do this, even if other folks don't believe in you. You have to believe in yourself first, right? And be that advocate. But in your journeys, how did you all surround yourself with a network of folks that also advocated on your behalf, that also supported you, especially if any of you were the first in your families to go to college or the first ones to go into STEM? Even if you weren't the first in your family to go to college, a career in STEM, especially for a person of color, can sometimes be a challenge, right? And so I'd like to hear from all of you. Kelly, if you want to go ahead and start.
Sure. So I was one of the first people in my family to go to college. In my immediate family, I was raised by two strong women, my mother and my grandmother. So I was lucky enough to have really strong advocates at home. My grandmother, she knew the importance of education. So she definitely was always advocating for me to make sure that I pushed myself, I did well. And she told me from, day one in high school, your grades are going to count. We can't afford to send you to college, so you're going to have to go for those academic scholarships. So I knew that my grades, mattered. And, starting from freshman year, I was going to try to, make an effort to, go and try to do the best I could on, all my classes, as well as like even just your spare time, thinking, strategically, what is it that you want to build or get those experiences in high school to set you up for, your college. So community service, getting out there, meeting other like-minded young people that, want to go far. That really helped me a lot before I went to college. And then after that, just networking and building relationships, even starting in college with other like-minded people, whether it's a teacher or your peer students, and then getting involved in a lot of outside organization like Inroads, if some of you have heard of that, or NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. All those outlets are out there to really be a support system. And if you just reach out, there's a lot of people out there that will help you if you don't have that type of support at home.
I agree with Kelly. It is just critical to surround yourself with people who are doing good things and who believe in you, and be sure to pour that same energy back into them. When I went to college, went to a historically Black college in Greensboro, North Carolina, A&T, and I joined the National Society of Black Engineers. I joined a fraternity. I joined groups who got you in the space of like-minded individuals. People who are pushing you to be better. You will be judged, or you will be pushed by the I will say, the crowd you keep. If you put yourself in places where people are doing good things, you're going to meet good people. So that would be one piece of advice I would give all.
I'm gonna jump in here and say, I'm gonna echo what the other panelists have stated, but another piece is, it's okay if you see someone else in a role that you are interested in doing, is to go and ask a question. The worst thing that can happen, they say no. So for instance, for me, it was having a mentor, even in high school, or someone who saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And I learned down the road was an advocate when I didn't even know I needed an advocate, because I was doing my own thing in the younger years, but then was like distracted and all. But it was a teacher, for example, for me, she would go in and say, you know what, told my parents, bring her to the high school, even though I was in middle school. Once you come up here with your other with her siblings, bring her up here. And we found the root cause of things was I wasn't challenged, right? So having her as a mentor at that age, but also learning she was a nuclear engineer that retired at an early age, and then came back to teach because she wanted to go and pour into other generations. So for me, it was her effort and time frame, time spent that helped me along the path, as well as with parents and other individuals. And similar to Cordell, I too joined a sorority at HBCU, Tuskegee University, and I have, moving from cross country to other places, you have the experience of internships and networking and challenging. Surround yourself with people that are mentors, advocates, but also true. You're not gonna be perfect. Some of the people I respect the most have said, you out of line. This is what you did, X, Y, and Z, someone that can check you and knowing it's coming from a true place.
And then I'm going to piggyback off of everybody. Yeah, and coming off of HBCU, I did join a sorority as well, and advocates, because like I moved across country to multiple states as well. And it's great because you have that, you have a sisterhood, you also have a professional network that you have connections with. And when you meet people at conferences, because it's just a little thing, it's like, hey, I'm moving to California, because like I just moved to California a couple of months ago, and I was able to say, hey, I'm moving to California, and I was able to network with people here and have a connection. And then also, but some of your advocates will actually end up becoming your sponsors too, because you don't know where they're at in their careers, and you don't know who they're talking to either, because some of them are in conference rooms, and some of them are in meetings, and they're advocating for you, and they're even talking greatness and sponsoring you to possibly get more in your career and like grow you as an individual, that you don't know what they're doing to help you move along in your career path and move you along in your journey.
So Zaire, you mentioned.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to break protocol here because I noticed 3 of the 4 we mentioned sororities and fraternities, but I want to make sure I level set something here, because I don't want people to leave the room thinking that in order for you to accomplish, you have to be a part of a sorority or fraternity. It is other networking things that's out there. They mentioned National Society of Black Engineers. You have various conference, STEM have multiples out there as well. So don't feel like, oh boy, I need to go and join an organization. No, you can have a mentoring group that's surrounded, even if it's a group that enjoy walking in the community, that can become an advocate, because you never know who you're sitting across the table with. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get back to protocol.
No, not a problem. I was actually going to dig a little deeper into what Zaire mentioned. She talked about a sponsor and a mentor. And I think it's important that we differentiate the two for those that are watching us today, because I do think they're different. Would you all agree that a sponsor and a mentor are different and perhaps come at different phases in your career journey, sometimes at the same time, sometimes at different points, but they do play a unique role? And I see Cordell and Kelly immediately, unmute themselves. So please, if you all can provide some clarity around that, because I think that's an important point that we want to make sure the students walk away with.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I was just going to mention like a mentor, could be technical, it could career-wise. That would be, it could be a peer. It doesn't even have to be an older person that has more experience. You can have mentors, as many, as you would like, and can maintain all different aspects of your life and career, where the sponsor typically, as I think it was mentioned, if you have that person in certain rooms, they're putting their name out there because they really believe in you. And so when there's meetings that you're not privy to, they're gonna put your name out there to be considered for potential career growth, or, opportunity that you might not be able to be in that discussion, but it's because they really believe in you. They've connected with you in a way that they're going to put their name out there and be willing to sponsor you.
Exactly. A mentor is somebody that you have regular touch points with, whether they're monthly, quarterly, what have you, and talk about, different situations that you're facing and help you with your career goal. That sponsor or that advocate, that's that person that's in the room when an opportunity comes by and says, you know what, I think Kelly would be perfect for that role. You need somebody in the room when those decisions are being made that will be able to speak on your behalf. Two very different things.
Thank you for that, because I do believe that, that sponsor is saying there's a seat at this table and that seat should be for this person. And they're helping you to make sure that wherever there are seats, wherever there are tables, your name is in that hat, right? And I think that's what you're speaking to, Cordell, and Kelly on that. And I want to make sure that we highlighted that for some of the students. I also want to go, before we go into the next question, talk a little bit about the college experience, because oftentimes there's a misconception that in order to be an engineer, I have to go to a top-notch, university or college. If not, I'm not going to be making all the money that Cordell alluded to earlier, so they're all worried about securing the bag, right? They all want the bag, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they all have the same pathway to get to where you all are at. And there's so many different ways from high school to college to the point where you guys are at in your careers. And so before we get to the next question, which we're going to transition into, I think it's important to talk a little bit about, what may be some of the pathways some of the students may not have thought about that you could still walk in, right? And get to the point where you are all in.
Well, I actually did go to a top-notch university, North Carolina A&T State University. So, but what I will say is I think there may be a little too much emphasis on the title of the school. I have people in my organization that have gone to what you would consider some more of the traditional top-notch engineering schools, if you will, and they work for me in my organization. The point I want to make is your university may get you the interview. It does not get you your career. That is on you. So when I'm looking through resumes, like, yeah, I might see an MIT, but if I see an A&T, we're going to have a conversation. That's where the university, I think, helps, particularly with an undergraduate degree. But as you progress in your career, it's not really about the formal education that you got as an undergraduate. It's more about the experiences. It's more about the exposure. It's more about the image, what you bring to the table. Your undergraduate degree matters less and less the further you move in your career. I don't know if anybody on the panel agrees with that.
I absolutely agree what you're saying. So one thing that, I too went to a top-notch university, Tuskegee University as well. But one thing with that being said is, once you think about the big picture, as you echo, of your career, is having the foundations and understanding that if the school you're attending for a degree, is it accredited? It's multiple pathways to get there. You can start off at a junior college, might be an option for you. Everybody's path to life is different. So if you start off at a junior college and then go to the segue and say, well, finish up some of your core courses, then go to a university, a four-year university, you're still on the same path. Guess what? By the time that the resume, you go and start reviewing the multiple resumes there, you're looking for certain key things and knowledge skills that are being, you're learning, and problem solving items that are inside of your resume. So don't feel like, oh boy, It might be financial, or even that you have to know yourself. Self-awareness to me is very key. I realized I need to go to a smaller university. I did not need to go to a huge university as my younger self. So the great part of me going to the country was allowing me to enjoy the college experience, as the question you asked, and realizing it's a life balance. I call it an education and life balance that occurs there. That you can still go to college and be an engineer and not have to 100% be into the books, what I mean, where you have no social life. It's all about prioritization.
And for me, like during the summers, I would go to the community college in my local town because college is not cheap. And so if I can get some credits that were cheaper in my college over the summer, I would go to my internship in the summer in the daytime, and then go to class at night and just take the basic math classes. So I would take like my calculus class and get that to transfer over to Tuskegee. And then I even took a physics class at the junior college and got that transferred over. And that was simple. And I still got that credit and got that grade transferred, and it kept my GPA simple and sweet, and I didn't have to pay extra money. And I still got a degree at Tuskegee.
Sounds about right.
That was simple.
Kelly?
Money.
Yeah, I guess for me, I actually did go to Ivy League University, Brown University in Providence. Interesting, the reason why I ended up going was maybe different than what you expect. Part of it was my grandmother again. She was thinking about, hey, just because some of these schools are more expensive, apply, see if you get in, we'll see what happens. It turned out they actually gave me the most money out of all the 9 schools I applied to. So strategically, it made sense because it worked out that I had to pay almost nothing. And then the other part was in my high school, similar to Zaire, as she mentioned, you might have had pushback from certain people that are supposed to be, I guess, your career counselors in school. They were like, oh, well, that's a hard school to get into. You probably wouldn't be able to get into, even though I had totally good grades and test scores. I guess they were doubting the likelihood of, somebody like me getting into one of those schools. So I think part of it was a challenge, applying, because there's nothing wrong with applying as long as, you come up with the application, you write the essays, you can apply, it's your choice and the opportunity once you get accepted to select which school best fits your, your personality and what you want to do with your career or college experience. But other than that, that was probably 2 of the major reasons why I down selected, the school I did.
And, some of you mentioned junior colleges and community colleges. And I think it's important to mention, when you get that bachelor's degree certificate, when it finally arrives like 4 months later after you graduate, it's not going to say started at a community college and then you transfer to, what have you, university. It's going to say you have a bachelor's degree from wherever you ended at, right? And I think that's important for folks to also walk away with is it's not where you start, it's where you finish, right? That's what goes on that diploma, and that's what goes on the certification or on your resume, right? When you turn in that resume, Cordell mentioned that resume earlier. So keep that in mind. So if you have to go to a community college for financial reasons, I'm not sure what I want to do just yet, and I still am exploring things, then go, think about that as you're budgeting out your education. Does it make sense to go straight into a 4 university and spend the extra money right now when you're still trying to figure out, some things? And so keep that in mind as you're having these discussions with your parents and your CAP advisors at school. I think it's a perfect segue into the next question for Bianca and Cordell around some of the skills necessary. We all talked, I think, for a little bit on networking. We talked about how you all networked with your sororities, the organizations that you all belong to in college and even post-college, right? But some students may sit here watching this presentation and say, I don't know how to network, right? And I do believe networking is a skill, right? Not everyone has the ability to walk into the room and shake hands and walk out of that room with some connections and some contacts, and then know how to nurture those relationships, because that's the second part, right? How, for those of the students that are watching that are struggling with that as a skill, how do they become better at that? How do they improve that networking skill? So when they do enter a room where they have opportunity to connect with partners, they do walk away with a contact that perhaps could be that changing mentor or sponsor in their life.
That's a good question. I'm looking forward to Veronica's answer, because I struggle with that too, even to this day. And I don't like the term necessarily networking. What I prefer is building relationships, and you do that, and you'll have that opportunity in college when you do your group projects. I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. When I see you putting in the work, when you're coming prepared for the class assignments, when I see you engaged in an effort to get us across the finish line, that is, I think, much more relevant than walking into maybe a networking event and shaking someone's hand and getting to know them, doing your elevator pitch. I still struggle with that. What I want to do is see the work you put in. I want you to see the work I put in, how committed I am. And you don't know who these people are that you're working with. And you'll start to build your brand as somebody who is dedicated, somebody who is willing to put in the work and go that extra mile. And you'll find quickly that people will start coming to you, trying to get to know who you are.
So one thing is interesting, she asked the two of us, I was hoping you was going to help me in this category, because for me personally, I get anxiety if I'm around a lot of people, and that's self-awareness. So for the longest, it took a while in my career. It's been realized decades or so in this field. I learned that it's okay to be true to myself, but also to get out of my comfort zone. So one thing for me when it comes to networking is, okay, I understand my brand that I have of putting forth the hard work and details, but also challenging myself as a baby step. My initial thing a mentor had me to go do is I travel with work at the airport. Go early in my career. Once you go and sit down and have a beverage or go in and eat, go and speak to someone that you don't know. That might sound a very simple task, but that taught me through the years of figuring out other ways to navigate situations. Want to know why? The impression that you're leaving in details, you're growing yourself. So in the networking field, now you start building the relationship piece that come about, communication, but really key skills. If I get back to the original question of key skills, I believe as an engineer, you really need to have collaboration skills. Problem solving skills are needed. And those are needed even as problem solving. A problem we're trying to solve right now is how do we navigate the networking path in our careers? How do we go? Everything is about looking at it as a problem and a pitch. So that's what I would say for that one. Very good question.
Kelly, Zaire, would you like to add to some of the skills mentioned, or to the networking, meeting folks, contacting new folks, building relationships?
So I'm an introvert. I don't seem like it sometimes, but I am. So like after this, I'm gonna definitely go into my hole and like kind of just get energy again. But after that, the thing with like networking for me, just because it is exhausting just to talk to people for myself, is that you have to kind of like pitch yourself. You have to like give yourself a pep talk every time to go talk to somebody, because it takes a lot of energy. It's like, okay, I gotta go do it. I gotta go do it. Like I gotta go talk to somebody. And it's just like, you have to get yourself prepared to walk into that room. But the little things that I, at least with my coworkers, for example, because like just not even networking with them, but building that relationship, is that I like picking up on the little things with my coworkers. Like, so if one of my coworkers' children, like, because I'm fairly young compared to my coworkers on my team, so a lot of them have children, but like they have kids that are like in sports, and so like one of their children might be playing a baseball game tournament this weekend. And so I'm like, and so on Monday I might ask, oh, how did your son play in the baseball game? And that's helping build our relationship. And I might ask him that before we're talking about our actual task that we need to talk about with work. And then we'll build that relationship, and then we'll go into our actual work talk that we need to go talk about. And that's an easy way into like building that relationship. And then next time we talk, I can ask something else about his child or go into something else. And then like just picking up on little things that I know about that person individually. And it shows that I'm listening and I kind of care a tad bit about their lives. And then they know that I'm paying attention. So that at least that's my skill when it comes to at least building a relationship that I do.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Being able to build those relationships with people, whether you want them to potentially be your mentor or just a coworker you're working with, definitely being able to have empathy and respect for people at all levels. I notice depending on what job function people are doing. When I became a young engineer, I noticed that sometimes they would treat people on the shop floor. A lot of them were the most diverse part of our population. You know, people who I would consider, I would call Miss So-and-so or whatever, that my auntie, uncles. I would go out of my way to go out there and talk to them and do that same thing as I mentioned, like get to know them. And when things needed to happen, I always had the help I needed. My stuff moved on the floor. Because I treated those people with respect and I got to know them personally. It wasn't just a worker, you know, that I just need them to move my parts through the line, you know, on the shop floor. So I think building that reputation of being authentic and being able to respect people regardless of their job function, because you can be an engineer, but the parts are going to get made if you don't respect the people that need to make the part physically and run the machine that has your parts. So I think that's a skill wherever you are in your career, whether you're doing STEM, engineering at all. And then communication. So a number of the panelists mentioned, you know, they might have had different periods of communication that they had to work on, you know, just being able to engage or speak to different people at different levels, because you have to be astute enough to know the audience, how often and what level of detail you need to go into. So I think that skill set lends itself well to be an engineer, because there's going to be people who are not engineers and you need to be able to translate some important, you know, main information to them to help you, or, you know, make sure you're getting the funding you needed, and having that skill to be able to communicate and knowing who your audience is as you go through your career is going to be a very good skill.
Thank you for that. You know, we've gotten a lot of questions from students who are interested to know about what you guys are actually working on at Raytheon. And so I'm going to start with Kelly, but I really would like you all to take a part in this question. And, you know, what is the moment in your career, you know, as an engineer that you feel the most proudest of? Like, is there a project that you're currently working on that you're really excited about? Or is just a key moment, you know, along your journey that you can look back to and say, man, that was awesome. And you hold on to that. So Kelly, you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Sure. So coincidentally, I work on designing and manufacturing of jet engines. So that's military, commercial jet engines, the planes that you take, you go on vacation or travel. We are the power that keeps those different aircrafts in the air. A lot of what I do right now is military, but I have worked on commercial throughout my career. It's really enjoyable. So that's something that, you know, people are more interested. We could always, you know, get into more, but I'll let the other panelists talk about what they do.
My proudest moment as an engineer actually occurred prior to joining Raytheon. I used to design optical benches and structures for communication satellites. And so the NSS-9 was my first satellite that launched. Prior to it going to the launch facility, I signed my name on the thermal blankets. And just to see, and then to see the rocket take off, and I literally have my name in space right now, just or in geosynchronous orbit with the Earth. I mean, that was my proudest moment.
So I'll go, oh, is that you? No.
Well, I work on a space mission. So since my career, I have a clearance. So all of my projects that I've worked on since graduation has been classified. So I can't tell you anything that I work on. But my job is fun. I can tell you that. I started off with communications engineering, so that's everything with radios, but that deals with something that deals with an aircraft. And then the next thing that I worked on was a military aircraft. And then now I work in a space division that's classified. So everything's classified, but they're all cool. But yeah.
I can relate. So I'm in the Missile Defense Division as well. So it's the defense industry working in. I would say my most proudest moment in the career part, I was a lead engineer for training devices, and I would go and work with soldiers and warfighters. So my proud moment was when I got certified to be a gunner on, and I'm still certified by the government to be a certified gunner of firing javelins. If you know about a javelin, put the weight on the side of you and going to fire them. That's what I did for a while. So that's a proud moment there for myself. But the one that I hold on to if I'm having a long, tough, hard time at work is I remember once going through the airport, and it occasionally occurs with individuals that have been trained, Marine Corps or regardless of what entity, and I look up and see where they're going, is knowing that I did everything possible to make sure they was prepared to go there. From what my standpoint, I gave 110%, and knowing that the decisions that's being made today that I made, even though you might not hear all the cool things and a lot of people don't even know things exist, is okay. I'm out there supporting, trying to help others get to come home.
Wow, like I totally wasn't expecting the diversity of answers that I received, but I think it's so important for students to hear what are some of the cool, even classified things that we can't mention. Some of you are working on. Kelly, you wanted to add one more thing to that?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to just mention my proudest moment as an engineer was essentially being a part of history. Like when you get to work on those cutting edge technologies, doing things that haven't been created or designed before. And so I actually worked on one demonstrator project, was increasing the power that was going to be coming out of one of our existing military fighter jets. And in order to do that, the hot section of the engine, which is where my organization primarily is responsible for, was testing the hottest, run, turbine and part of that hot section that had ever been run before, and actually successfully doing it, not burning up the parts. So that was really cool. And then, have that featured in Aviation Week and the different industry magazines after that, knowing like you own that hardware, as Cordell had mentioned, your name was on it. You're like, I was a part of that. I made history.
Thank you for that. It's so amazing to kind of listen to you all talk about all of the different projects that you've worked on and your own proudest moments, right? Because the diversity of thought to creating, building, and developing innovative products is so critical, right? When a product is being developed, when a service is being curated for consumers, making sure that there are a group of diverse folks at the table in that development phase is critical. And I want to be sensitive to time. So I want to go to also very critical questions. And, this question, I really want to make sure that all of you get a chance to really talk to, because we had some students kind of ask this. And that is, what advice would you give to your 17-year-old younger self that perhaps had no clue what they wanted to do when they grew up and went to college, or had no clue how they were going to go to college, let alone pay for college? If you were 17 years old today, and that person was sitting across from you, as is our audience right now, what would you say to them? And let's start with Cordell.
I would tell myself, that's a great question. There are two things. One, embrace mentorship. I came in kind of thinking I could do this on my own. No, nobody does it on their own, and nor should you want to. Embrace mentorship. And second thing is be confident in your abilities. I went to North Carolina A&T. It was the first cohort in this job. I went to school. I started with a group of guys that went to Michigan, went to MIT, went to University of Syracuse. What I found out quickly was the books they had in college were the same books I had. I had every right to be there. I knew just as much as they did. Be confident in your abilities. No one can stop you.
Bianca, I see you on mute.
So I would say I would go and give myself a hug, and then I would go and sit there and say, you got this. Regardless of the circumstances or what you came for, they don't define you. You can go and step in any room, as Cordell mentioned, have the confidence. You have all the equipment that is needed. Edgar A. Guest comes to my mind. It's a poem about you have all the equipment that you need to conquer anything, but it's like you have a brain and hands and eyes to use. With this equipment, they all began. So start from the top and say, I can. I love poems. I would go and tell that poem to my younger self and say, wherever you go and wherever life takes you, it's a journey. Enjoy the ride. Don't be so determined to get there. Stop and smell the roses. Enjoy the ride. You got this.
I would tell myself definitely keep working hard, stay determined, and making sure that I gave myself the ability to try new things. Always being able to allow myself to get out of my comfort zone, asking questions, lots of questions, doing Google research about any and everything that you're curious about. You might find out there's a different type of engineering that you didn't even know existed. Because not everybody has to be aerospace, mechanical, you do chemical, electrical. Find out all those different types of engineering, and then really, look into what careers or industries that they can be applied into.
And then I would tell myself, you can plan ahead, and your plans are definitely going to change with time. Just remember that there's more than one path to achieving your plans.
Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, because I'm a planner, and so I always get upset when my plans don't always work out the way that they are supposed to work out in my head.
And 9 times out of 10, plans don't absolutely work out exactly as we plan, right? And I want to thank all 4 of you for joining us today. I think you all talked about overcoming the imposter syndrome, right? Of not thinking you belong in certain rooms, the importance of finding key folks in your lives that can serve as sponsors and or as mentors to kind of help you remove some of those social barriers that you sometimes create for yourself as the imposter syndrome, right? The lack of role models. Some of you didn't have a role model, and you talked about overcoming that challenge and that barrier, and still being able to achieve, your goals of becoming engineers. We talked about math and science may not be something you love, but it has to be something you have to befriend. Right? We don't have to love each other, but we got to like each other a little bit at least, because I need you to get to the next step. And so, and that's true. And I think it's important. And Bianca talked about making sure you have a core circle of people that are true. You don't want yes people in your life, right? You want some people that are going to be in your circle that says, nah, that's a no, right? So you want to make sure that you have the right environment that is going to be conducive to you being successful. And you will come to some barriers, but you also have to have the strength within yourself to say, I can overcome it. Nothing worth achieving sometimes comes easy, right? They say sometimes it has to be a little bit hard in order to really achieve. And, Cordell mentioned at the beginning, if securing the bag is at the top of that priority list for you, a engineering career is something to consider, as he did at the beginning. I want to give a chance. We have about 2 minutes before we close this. Does anyone have any closing thoughts before we close out our panel today?
I'll just say we need engineers. If it wasn't made by God, an engineer had his or her hand in it. From the paint on the walls, the desk you're sitting in, the shoes on your feet, there are processes, procedures, design, quality, sales. Engineers do it all. And we need more of you to jump into this field. There's a wealth of support. There's a great opportunity. I've seen parts of this world that I didn't know exist because of the path I chose. And you can do the same.
Anyone else?
Oh, Aggie Pride.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree with everything Cordette said, and definitely testament to that. Like here, 17 years later into my career, like I bought my mama a house. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, yes, this is one of my like long-term dreams. Like engineering, that's gonna be the pathway. A lot of you guys, to set yourself up, your families, just being able to, build that legacy for your family, maybe even.
So my closing remarks is, don't worry, take a deep breath. This is a lot, but STEM, it's a lot of fun in STEM. A day of work, I tell people I never do the same job twice. Every day it's a new problem. It's a new challenge. It's something that you get an opportunity to grow in multiple ways. You can actually be hands-on as being in the field with soldiers, but also you can go and sit at a computer, have this opportunity and diversity in the path. You can sit at a computer, or you can end up on a factory floor aiding in the design in ways and methods. So don't feel like engineering is a box. Engineering is a field. To me, it's like, look outside, go look at the sky. That's engineering to me.
And honestly, there's so many doors that the previous engineers have opened for us that the sky is not the limit anymore. We have footprints on the moon, and they're still going to make footprints on Mars coming up next. So I hope that y'all are making footprints on Mars. So by the time that I'm in my 80s, I can be like, yes, I see y'all up there.
And with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Raytheon Technologies, for this incredible panel celebrating Black engineers at Raytheon Technologies. Have a great day, everyone.